In this video, I will give you a proper overview over the different areas on the island of Zanzibar that attracts most investors in the tourism industry, and I will share with you the business opportunities and challenges that each one of these places offers. Make sure to stick till the end because I will reveal which area that was extremely hyped and that many people invested in, lost big time and was very disappointing in my opinion, and which part of Zanzibar will be the next hotspot. Welcome to Plan B, back to Africa. My name is Wayne. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I am a cultural anthropologist and historian in African studies, and you might think, oh, this is totally unrelated to today's topic, but I have also some investments on the island, and the knowledge that I gained during my studies about the Swahili culture and the language Kiswahili itself really helped me in my business ventures here in East Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania to be precise. Now, without any delay, let's get straight into it. Let's start with Zanzibar Town. Many people mistake Stone Town as the capital of Zanzibar, when in fact Stone Town is the historical quarter and the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Zanzibar Town is the capital of Zanzibar, and there's a lot of businesses going on there. Hotel owners, business owners, they mainly get their supplies from Zanzibar Town. And of course, there's also a lot of tourism in connection with the historical places in Stone Town, and also many tours to the neighboring island like Prison Island, Nakupenda Island depart from the fort at Stone Town. Since everyone who arrives on the island of Zanzibar does so in Zanzibar Town on the ferry port or airport which is located there, it is the first destination that people touch base with. And accordingly, there are so many hotels, accommodations. In my opinion, opening up a hotel in Zanzibar Town doesn't really make much sense. I advise everyone who thinks of opening a resort, a hotel, an Airbnb on the island of Zanzibar to think twice. There are already so many accommodations, so I urge you to please think outside of the box. For example, you can import or manufacture goods that hotels need. Let me give you an example. There's only one store in Zanzibar Town that delivers the majority of the hotels with foam, for instance, for their sunbeds. And I talked to the owners where they get their foam from, and they get it from the mainland, from Dar es Salaam, where foam is being manufactured. And I asked them, would this not be a good business opportunity to manufacture foam here on the island of Zanzibar, since so many new hotels, resorts are opening up and they are in need of mattresses and foams for their sunbeds, for their sofas. And guess what they told me? There has been already a factory that has produced foam, but they have shut down. So it would be very interesting to do some more research about that because the demand is clearly there. But besides foam, I struggled to find flower pots, for instance. So if you are able to manufacture, ideally manufacture in the country to make sure that the money stays in the country, flower pots, then believe me, there is such a huge demand. You could deliver and sell to hotels, to Airbnbs, to private homes. Most flower pots that you get there are made out of cement and they all look the same. There's not much variety in terms of design and material. Or you can also deliver hotels with organic food, with vegetables, with poultry, dairy products, with bakery products. You see, the possibilities are endless because Zanzibar is mainly a tourist destination and this is the biggest sector. You can really take advantage of that and leverage the need that hotels and accommodations in general have. Next, let's look at Nungwi and Kandwa, which is located in the north of the island. It used to have the nickname the Ibiza of Zanzibar. You will find massive resorts there like the Hilton Hotel, big hotels that have 100+ bedrooms, and also accordingly, there's a lot of tourism going on there. Nungwe was the first place on the island of Zanzibar that experienced a massive tourism boom. It's an area that attracts mainly younger tourists. There are a lot of parties going on there, a lot of entertainment. However, It's not really my favorite place on the island of Zanzibar. Honestly, I don't really like it. The local people are very kind everywhere on the island, but because there's so much tourism over there, accordingly, there's also a lot of beach boys, Maasais, on this little beach strip who are trying to sell their goods, their services, their tours, you name it. So tourists can barely relax without being disturbed every 5 minutes. And in terms of accommodation, it's extremely oversaturated. I know there are some real estate projects going on there for investors who want to invest in their private residence. But when you want to make money with your accommodation, know that you are competing with hotels who have established themselves long time ago, and it's, you know, oversaturated, as I said. When it comes to the beach, it's very beautiful, but as I said, unfortunately, it's too small to host all those tourists, and that's why the beaches are extremely packed. And interestingly, still, Nungwi has been extremely hyped in the past years because of the fact that the northern part of the island of Zanzibar doesn't experience tides. So for those who don't know, Zanzibar has tides, low tide and high tide. Every day for at least 3, 4, 5 hours, the tide becomes so low that in parts of the east coast, you are not even able to swim in the ocean. And this is not the issue on the northern part of the island, in Nungwe and Kendwa. You can swim the entire day. And because of that, the north has been extremely hyped. But let me tell you something. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing how when the tides turns and change, the colors of the ocean change in the southeast coast on the Indian Ocean side. You see 50 shades of blue, and being able to just walk out for hours during low tide on the southeast coast into the Indian Ocean because the water doesn't get higher than your ankles during low tide. It's just a magical experience, especially in the moonlight. Imagine the moon shines so bright and the white sand. You don't even need a torch. Everything is so bright, but it's in the middle of the night. And that is why it's hard for me to understand that people see it as a disadvantage that the East Coast experiences tides. This is what makes the East Coast unique, in my opinion. However, when it comes to investment opportunities, let's say when it comes to water sports like jet skiing or kayaking, the north is a better place to invest because you can offer these services the whole day through. I met a lady of recent in Jambiani who also happened to see my YouTube channel and recognized me. And she told me she invested in transparent kayaks, which is a great investment opportunity in my opinion, because this is almost absent on the island. And as you know, travel content creator, they're always looking for aesthetic visuals that they can create on the island. And so if you're able to get a kayak and somebody who has a drone, you can shoot visually appealing and aesthetic content, right? And so she was also struggling with finding the right spot to rent her kayaks out for tourists. Eventually, I think she decided for the north of the island because of the issue on the east coast that you cannot use kayaks during low tide, right? There are many rocks on the southeast coast of Zanzibar, and when it's low tide, it's highly likely that these sharp coral rocks will destroy your sub, you know, the stand-up paddles that are very popular these days, or your kayaks. So I think eventually she decided for the north. So when it comes to the northern part of the island, investing on water sports is a good option. Now let's get to Paje, the center of the southeast coast, which was the second area that experienced a tourism boom after Nungwi. And it's mainly an area where kite surfers love to go because there is the strongest wind on the island, though not as strong as in other places like South Africa or Australia. I met many who were quite disappointed about the strength of the wind, and many days they couldn't even kite. And so still, this is an area where you will see so many kite surfers along the beach. Similar to Nungwe, it's also very touristy. The beach, though it's not so small, is very packed. You will see even cows on the beach, which is actually something very beautiful. But similar to Nungwe, there are so many beach boys, Maasais, and local women trying to sell you massage, henna. It's very, very difficult to find peace of mind and just be on your own, take a nap and relax, because you will be disturbed every 5 minutes. And this is from a tourist perspective. And also similar to Nungwi, you have a lot of parties going on there. But one thing that I really love about the people of Zanzibar is that despite the money that the tourism boom brings, the local people were able to still, or let's say they fought for that, they still maintain a level of power and decision making about the businesses that are opening up there. There was a club which created so much noise, and let's not forget, Zanzibar is a majority Muslim island, so everything that has to do with partying, with alcohol, is not in alignment with their values. And so I'm so glad they were able to kick out this club, which was transferred to another area of Zanzibar. But this also shows that you should be very mindful which business you open up. Don't have the crazy idea that you want to open up a beach club or something. Look for some other place to do that and respect the local culture and their values, please. In terms of accommodation, Paje, exactly like Nungwi, is in my opinion extremely oversaturated. You also have big hotels. There are many hostels because the area attracts also many low budget backpackers, and accordingly you have low budget hostels there. You have many Airbnbs there. You have also boutique hotel there. So from low budget to high end, everything is basically represented there. Compared to Nungwi in the north, in general, I find that the southeast coast offers a much more authentic experience of life and culture in Zanzibar. I find that the north in Nungwi and in Mkanda is very artificial. There's so many resorts there, as I said, and so you don't get to experience authentic local culture of Zanzibar in the north as you will in the southeast coast of Zanzibar. This also has mainly to do with the fact that you have to understand that some areas in Zanzibar, the local fishermen villages are located right along the beach, while in other areas they are a little bit far away from the beach. And so on the east coast, most of the local villages, the fishermen villages, are right at the beach. However, because of the big investment boom and many big resorts that are opening up and buying up the land from the locals, unfortunately in some areas the local fishermen lost direct access to the sea to go fishing and have to walk for a mile or two to access the beach because the hotel has closed off the property with a wall, which is very heartbreaking to see. However, as I said, most fishermen villages are located right on the beach in the southeast coast, and the hotels and the accommodations in general are nestled within these villages, so you get to experience beach life and local village life, which I find very beautiful. Paje is also known to have many restaurants. People from the surrounding areas often travel to Paje. The distances are very small. To the northernmost part of the southeast coast, the village of Michambi, which I will speak about later, it takes you a maximum 30 minutes drive. To the south, it takes you also a maximum 40 minutes drive. So Paje is really the center of the southeast coast. To make it short, I don't recommend investing into accommodation in Paje unless you come up with something very, very unique. You know, just for example, last week here, it might be here in Nairobi though, but Nairobi is also a place which is extremely oversaturated in terms of accommodation, right? There's thousands of hotels, of resorts, of Airbnbs. But guess where I stayed last week? And it was a mind-blowing experience. In fact, I've been waiting for a year to secure a space in this property because every time I checked, it was booked out for the time that I was in Nairobi. I stayed in a bus. It's called the Brandy bus. It used to be a bus which was now transformed into an Airbnb, and this was really a unique experience. So you can really apply this principle to anywhere in the world. Even if there are 1,000 hotels, if you come up with something very unique, which unfortunately requires mostly a big capital, you will win. However, there is another business opportunity which I want to share with you. There is a big problem of internet connectivity on the island. So I believe if you are able to create a co-working space with fast and stable internet, boom, you will win. Trust me. There's only one space which offers that, but it's actually a cafe. It's called Bara in Paje. And people say it's the most stable and strongest internet on the East Coast. And every day you will find many people working there. But I don't find this place comfortable to work at because it's an open space, right? And me, I cannot work in such an environment. I'm talking about a real co-working space, not a cafe with good internet. If you can manage to open up a place like this, believe me, you will win. And this is a business that will work particularly well in Paje, because as I said, Paje is the center of the southeast coast. And there are many people on the southeast coast in villages like Jambiani, Paje, Buiju, who settle for a longer period of time. When I say settle, I mean 3 months, right? Because you have a 90-day visa. I'm not talking about residents. They will be your best customers anyway, but there's a lot of nomads, you know, they call them digital nomads, people who work online and travel from country to country. And I know many people who have left the island after 2 or 3 weeks because they couldn't do their work, because the internet was just too bad. And the good news is that Starlink is about to be introduced on the island of Zanzibar. So if you can be one of the first to offer Starlink internet and a nice, comfortable co-working space, which has AC, which has closed rooms from where people can do their Zoom meetings, where they can have meetings with their local partners, trust me. Another good business opportunity would be to open a daycare center or an international school. Opening a daycare center is much more easier than opening an international school, which requires a lot of work. You need the license, which is not easy to get. But let me tell you something. If I understood one thing from traveling with kids on the African continent, then it is that education, international schools are a business model on the continent, okay? People are willing to pay extremely high prices for their kids to get good education, to be entertained, to be taken care of. And so there is almost no competition. I also suggest this specifically for the southeast coast of the island, because similar to what I've just mentioned about the co-working space, it's a place where many people settle for a longer period of time, including families with children. And there's only one international school on the east coast of Zanzibar, which is located in Jambiani, the area that I will speak about next. However, when I look at what this international school offers, it's really ridiculous. It's overpriced. Of course, they can do it because they have no competition. But it almost sounds like a scam to me when I see what they offer in terms of their rooms and equipment, in terms of their extracurricular activities. Children don't even learn Kiswahili there. At least I know children who go to school there, they don't speak a single word of Swahili, which is a big shame in my opinion, but that's not the topic. So yes, daycare center, another big problem. There are so many families that are traveling around the world, settling on the island of Zanzibar, and want their children to socialize with other children. However, it's very important that you are a competent, licensed, and experienced social worker. You have to have the skills to do that, because unfortunately, there were some scandals in the past, right? And that is why I don't recommend at this point anyone to send their children to a daycare center or a social club, however they name it. There have been cases where pedophiles from Europe, from America, came to the island of Zanzibar because, as we know, these people often travel to countries in the global south. And unfortunately, there were cases on the island of Zanzibar where men, right? There was a case of a German man who came to the southeast coast of Zanzibar and who offered kids activities and opened a daycare center, and he was sexually abusing the children. That's horrible. And also, you know, sometimes I just shake my head. There are WhatsApp groups where random people, and nobody knows these people, where they come from, who they are. They have no track record, right? They just come into these WhatsApp groups and say, oh yes, I'm offering daycare service and I'm charging this and this amount per child. And parents are really naive to send their children there, and you should be very mindful about that. But that's also a different topic. What I'm trying to say is there is a high demand for daycare centers and educational institutions that can take care of children, that educate children. And because there's almost no competition, you can make money with it. Another good investment opportunity in Paje and the neighboring areas is creating products out of seaweed, because there are so many seaweed farms along the southeast coast, and you can buy seaweed, which is also called sea moss, for a very, very low price, and the quality is extremely good. So you can create products like beauty products or sea moss gel, which is really hyped and so nutritious, especially among people who work out. And so you can produce these products locally and export them into other countries in Europe, America, other African countries, wherever there is demand. The good thing is about exporting, which I'm also always a big fan of exporting goods, is that you are creating jobs on the ground and you are bringing forex into the country. So yeah, that is another good business opportunity in my opinion. Now let's talk about the next area on the island of Zanzibar, a very popular place and one of my favorite places on the island, and I'm talking about Jambiani. Jambiani is a place that attracts many families and also people in the high-end segment, because you will not find massive resorts there, but more small and intimate boutique hotels. Of course, you also have a few hostels there and a few homestays. One thing I really love about Jambiani and what makes this place so special to me is that the fisherman village is located right along the beach. So even if you're there as a tourist, people can experience authentic local village life in Jambiani. It's also a tourist hotspot because the cave system are located there. So you have the Kuza cave, the Swahili cave, and generally on the other side of the road, like opposite of the beach facing the Indian Ocean, there's a lot of property for sale. And these properties are blessed with an abundance of fresh water, because as I said, also there is the cave system there. I have a friend who acquired a plot there and he wanted to drill his own well to have his own water supply, because similar to electricity, there's a problem with water supply by the government. And so he had to drill only for 2 meters to reach fresh water. How amazing is that? And so it's a good area to invest in my opinion. However, also similar like in other places, many hotels and accommodations and resorts, Airbnbs are already there represented. That's why, again, think outside of the box. Look what tourists and also local people might need. There are also local Zanzibaris who are quite wealthy because they make money in the tourism industry, and they also seek and can afford services like, for instance, a gym. That is something that is missing, a proper gym on the entire southeast coast of Zanzibar. As far as I know, there are only 2 gyms. The one is overpriced, and the other gym, most of the equipment there is broken and non-functional. So this is really something that it's really worth considering, investing into a gym. And here the same scenario as in Paje. Many families are based there. Many foreigners settle there for a couple of weeks and months. And Paje is just a 5-minute drive away. So if you open a co-working space there, you will succeed because you will attract all those people from the neighboring places. Now let's talk about the fisherman village north of Paje, also on the southeast coast of Zanzibar. Also big tourism hotspots. I'm talking about the villages Buiju and Nungwe. In my opinion, you find most beautiful beaches on the island of Zanzibar there because the coast is mostly untouched. The beach is palm shaded. You don't have many resorts there, just a very few, and they are really extremely luxury, extremely high end. And they also attract really wealthy tourists. Of course, there are also a very few hostels and Airbnbs there, but mainly you will find first-class resorts and boutique hotels there. It's a place where you can really find peace of mind on the beach. No Maasais, no beach boys, nobody trying to sell you something. You can just relax and take a time out. However, there's a reason why this area is mostly untouched, because it's very difficult to find a plot for sale there. You know, it's very interesting that in some parts of the island of Zanzibar, it's much more easier to find a plot for sale than in other beaches. And from what I've learned, this has also to do with the mentality of the local people in the respective villages. There are areas where locals are more likely to sell their land because they want to engage more also in businesses. They use the money to invest in opening a shop, in buying cars and selling cars. However, there are some areas on the island of Zanzibar, including the next one that I will speak about, Michambi, where locals are very, very conservative, where they live a very traditional way of life, and where they are very rooted to their ancestral land. And I heard that some people in some villages who refuse to sell their land look down on other locals in other villages that sell away their land, and they think they've lost their mind, right? And as I said, Michambi is such a village. It's very difficult to buy a piece of land there. It's a place that is really quiet. It's one of my favorite areas on the island of Zanzibar. It attracts mainly wealthy tourists. Hostels are almost absent in the area. Michambi became very popular for the iconic The Rock restaurant. It's a restaurant that is built on a rock, and it's a very unique experience. During low tide, you can walk to the restaurant, but during high tide, a boat picks you up and takes you there. And so tourists from all over the island come to Michambi for a day trip because the Rock restaurant is very Insta-worthy. They want to take pictures. However, the food, in my opinion, is extremely overrated and overpriced. But Michambi in general is a very, very beautiful area in my opinion. It's also the only place on the southeast coast where you can experience both the sunrise and the sunset because of its location. And yeah, it's a beautiful place in my opinion, very family friendly. The only downside is that along the east coast, starting from Buiju up to Michambi, there are many sharp coral rocks on the beach, and so when it's high tide you have to be careful how you walk because there are so many rocks, as I said, and many sea urchins, and believe me, you don't want to step on one of these. It's such a painful experience. So unfortunately, while the beach is one of the most beautiful beaches for your eyes, right, when it comes to swimming, Paje, Jambiani wins over beaches in Nungwe and Michambi. Accordingly, this area is not suitable for investments into water sports because, similar to what I've mentioned earlier about the kayaks, the rocks, they will destroy your boats, your stand-up paddles or your jet skis. But the end of Michambi, which is called Michambi Kai, which faces the Shwaka Bay, has this beautiful shallow waters which are perfect for water sports like stand-up paddles or jet skis. So if you're thinking about investing in water sports activities on the southeast coast, Shwaka Bay is the right place for this. When it comes to buying land, as I said, it's very difficult in Michambi compared to other areas on the island of Zanzibar. And this is also because a lot of land there in Michambi has been declared as land bank, which is reserved for agricultural purposes, for development projects. I once looked at a piece of land there and I was obsessed. It was too good to be true, mainly because I was obsessed with the soil. You know, I can recognize when a soil is very fertile. And while the owners tried to convince me that everything is okay with the piece of land and they gave me the green light, they were kind of pushing me to finalize the sales agreement. But my gut feeling told me, no, this is too good to be true. And I advise everyone, when it comes to buying land in Zanzibar, do your due diligence. This is key. You have to check the land properly. So I called the land commission. So they sent their representatives to check out the land and look if it's for sale. And boom, it turned out it's part of land bank. So even if I would have purchased it from these people who have the usage rights, so you're basically buying the rights to use the land from the people, but you can never own land in Zanzibar. You have to then go on and make a lease from the government. I would have never get the lease approved by the government of Zanzibar because this land was reserved for agricultural purposes. Similar scenario you have in the next village that I want to talk about, the area around Mkunduchi. Beautiful area, beautiful beaches. When you look at the soil, you think sometimes when you walk through the village that you are on the mainland, you know, the red soil, the lush green forests and plants. So beautiful, such a fertile land. It's also the area in Zanzibar where there is a lot of agricultural activities. And so a lot of land there is reserved as land bank as well. So it's not easy to acquire a piece of land in Mkunduchi. Mkunduchi is also the most traditional and most conservative area on the island of Zanzibar. And I witnessed this year in July when I attended the Mkanda Festival. That is basically a festival where they celebrate the Shirazi New Year according to the Persian calendar. Some of you might not know, but Zanzibar has a big Persian influence, and so you will still find the legacy of the first Persian migrants who settled in Zanzibar there in Mkunduchi, particularly during Mwaka, which reminded me of the movie The Purge, because once in a year everyone comes to Mkunduchi to release all their past grievances in the context of a big fight where people are fighting each other with banana sticks. It's wild. That's all I can say. I even recorded a YouTube episode about this festival. So if you're interested, you should check it out. So yes, Mkunduchi is very traditional. There's not much tourism going on there. Accordingly, there's also not many accommodations. However, you can find properties for sale. But I must say the oceanfront is not as beautiful as in Jambiani or in Paje, because they are mainly elevated on rocks, which has its benefits and which has its disadvantages. The disadvantage is that you cannot really build a hotel with a sandy beach in front of you because it's elevated on a rock, and so during low tide, the water, when it goes back, then you have the sandy beach, but from the cliff on which the property is located, you have to build stairs or steps. The benefit of buying such a piece of land is that you don't need to worry about the rising sea level, which is something that is unstoppable, right? So if you look at places like Jambiani, Paje, some hotels are in trouble big time there. The water is coming closer and closer because the sea level is rising, and they have already put a lot of sandbags there to prevent the water from entering their property. This is something that you don't have to worry about in Mkunduchi, which is why I believe investing in a property there is definitely a good idea, especially if you think long term. I absolutely see potential in Mkunduchi. I love Mkunduchi, and I believe it's one of the most underrated places on the island of Zanzibar. Plus, it's located close to the next big hotspot on the island of Zanzibar, which is Kizimkazi, fam. Kizimkazi is a real hidden gem, one of the most underrated places on the island of Zanzibar. It's located in the southwest coast of the island, and let me tell you something, fam. You will not be able to recognize Kizimkazi in 5 years. There's so much development going on there. Also because the current president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu, Kizimkazi is her birthplace. That's where she's from, and she's giving back to the community, and I love to see that. She's really developing the area. She has a lot of investments there herself. A big primary school will open up there soon, so she's really giving back to the community. Many real estate projects going on there, and just in general, the coastline in Kizimkazi, amazing. I really see big potential there in the future because Kizimkazi by far has not as many accommodations as other places offer, like Jambiani, Paje or Nungwi. So if you manage to get a piece of land there and you think long term, right, because this area is going to attract more and more tourists in the future, they have launched the Kizimkazi Festival now that will happen yearly and attract tourists from all over the island. then you will be successful. I really believe that there's huge potential in the area. Last but not least, let's talk about an area that was very promising a few years ago. Many people invested there, and I get asked daily by people if it's a good idea to invest there. But unfortunately, I believe that this area in the future will lose big time and that you should not invest into the area. I'm talking about Fumba Town. I mean, the apartments are beautiful, but the beach in Fumba Town is below average. And not only that, people have been sold apartments there for 60,000 US dollar, 70,000 US dollar, and they were promised to get residency. Up to now, none of them has received their residency yet, because to receive the residency through investment, you have to invest a minimum of 100,000 US dollar. And this is really devastating for the people. It's almost like they have been scammed. So yeah, what can we say about Fumba Town? I know many people, tourists, who wanted to spend a week in Fumba Town, but after 3 nights they canceled because there's not much to do. Fumba Town is a good place for people who want to settle permanently, who work in Stone Town, in Zanzibar Town, because it's just a 30 minutes drive to the airport, 15 minutes drive to town. So for local people, for Zanzibaris, or for people from Tanzania who are wealthy, who can afford to invest into properties, to live in these properties, it's a good deal, I would say. But for people, foreigners, who want to invest into accommodation, into properties to do business with, not to live in, I think Fumba Town is not the right place because it's not attractive to tourists. It's far away from the tourism hotspots, from the Jozani forest, from the beautiful beaches on the southeast coast. And so, yeah, I think you are better off if you invest in property in other areas of Zanzibar. I have given you a brief overview now. You know, starting a business on the island of Zanzibar is not easy, believe me, especially in the short-term rental industry. However, if you think outside of the box, if you come up with a unique idea, like transform a boat or a bus or I don't know, you name it, into a unique accommodation, you can stand out and you will succeed. Unless you do that, you will have a hard time competing with properties who have established themselves for a long time on the island of Zanzibar. So I can only share my own personal observations and my own experiences and share with you what I believe is missing on the island and where there is a big demand for. But in the end, I believe everyone has to do his or her own research. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, please share them in the comment sections below. And I look forward to see you next time. Bye.